Whoa. Welcome to the Green Tide. And we're back with WAAAGH Wednesdays. All right, guys. The new meta's out. The new lists are here. Or well, for orcs, I don't know how new they really are. But across the meta, we have seen the rise of all new nemesis, new gets the crump. And I'm excited to bring it to you and let you know what's going on. We're going to be covering 3 GT lists this week. And of course, my flavor of the week. I have to find always a list that I personally find to be either entertaining or just fun. That way people can understand that it's not all about the meta. It's also about just having fun with your list too. We'll go over the stats. We'll give a quick look into Meta Mondays. And overall, we'll just look at the list, give my opinion. Let's see the rise of the Green Tide. Hello, everybody. Hello. I'll take a peek at the chats, make sure I didn't miss anything. Hello, Gits. Hello. Whoa. All right, before I get too lost in the sauce on those, let's talk about where the orcs ended up this week according to Meta Monday, right? Normally, I'll go into Goonhammer, pull up their stats as well, but I like for that to compile at least 3 weeks usually before I start to look at the averages. I feel like you need a certain amount of time before you start looking at that. So let's go straight into the Meta Monday. Pull that up. Boop. All right, I highlighted for you the orcs. So as you can see, it shows our sub-faction. We only have one, obviously. The players, and the games played, and our wins. So orcs are sitting here with 21 players, 51 wins, 105 games played, 2 XO place. I think they believe this is for placings, and we are sitting at a 50%. But as the whole, look at the meta as a whole, a lot of people are sitting somewhere near 50%, right? This is actually pretty healthy for the game. And some of the big bad nemesis that people were assumed, right? Here we are, Necrons are actually pretty low on this totem pole. Custodes have taken a huge hit. That used to be one of our predatory matchups. And then, but that being said, if you look up at a couple of factions that we mentioned last week or going into the meta, Leagues of Voltan have risen to 48, something for us to keep in mind. Tyranids are sitting at 51, very popular faction, of course. I'm bringing these factions up because I believe that's where orc players need to kind of be attentive for, and we'll look over that today as to why. World Eaters. So if you've been around a while, you've seen that I've talked about World Eaters a lot. I think people didn't really understand how to play them. They were trying to get too simple with it. They were looking to just spam like specific World Eater units. I thought that was the wrong way to kind of play sometimes. You need allies when you're playing with World Eaters, and I feel like they've realized that, especially when they got their points reduction. So World Eaters, something you guys need to pay attention to, even though we do have the answers for that. Okay. Of course, we can see it's only 7 players, but you can see when we go with the matchups and such, they actually did well. A couple of lists we're covering did go into World Eaters. Okay. So orcs are sitting at a 50%. Now, what's my opinion about that? Well, I think orcs are kind of trying to find if there's a new groove in the meta, trying to see if maybe there's a new list we have to come up with, kind of pay attention to what new factions have been released. Tyranids as a whole, having their whole codex, gives us a lot of different looks with them, right? We understand what to do against monsters. We understand what things we need, but now we have a new monster in the game, and that's something that we're going to have to obviously pay attention to as well. The Norm Emissary is something that the orc players need to be aware of. Other than that, we didn't win any GTs. It's okay. We did place, and we're going to be going over the people that a couple people that placed, and then a list that I found as someone that wasn't mentioned in Meta Monday, but it's okay. As we can see here, we're going to be hitting Fields of Damnation. This is a GT, and we're going to Orc Thompson Cruikshank. Sorry if I ruined your name. All right. I wanted to bring up his list. We're also going to be covering Frogtown GT. There's actually 2 orc players that did exceptional. Of course, one of them is Brad Chester. Not surprising if you're aware of who he is. Sorry, I just clicked that for no reason. Oops, I just showed the other guy. So here's the Field of Damnation orc list. As you can see, we're going to see some similarities here to keep in mind between all the GT performing lists and orcs as a whole, what we're kind of keeping and what we're getting into. So if you've been paying attention to the meta, Captain Badrock, right? Captain Badrock has been creeping up for about 4 weeks or more. Beast Boss is still, even with the points increase, very important because he delivers dev wounds. And you understand as an orc player that we are lacking AP. So even though our squigs do moderately well into vehicles, sometimes they have great armor saves. And that's where the Beast Boss comes into play when you're getting into those matchups. But also, as you can see here, most people are just straight up going to Maz because Maz has more durability. The fact that he's a 4-up invuln, that really does matter when you're getting hit with high profile damage weapons. But also, he can kind of whiff on damage. I know some of you guys are like, no, he's great. I understand his profile looks great, but you're really banking on either the mount to land its devastating wounds, or you're really planning on the fact that you went off on a charge and it's on 5 pluses for criticals, right? So if that doesn't happen, your damage can very widely swing and have a difference. And I can see here that some people are starting to tech into Beast Boss with Edwapa's Kill Chopper again because they really just want that reliable damage into vehicles. And I think that's important to keynote to pay attention to. We have obviously our trusty Naban Smasher Squig and a Weird Boy. Weird Boy is just a great scoring tech piece for just throughout the whole game, moving around. I'm a fan, but he hasn't made it onto my list yet. Of course, we have, and with this is kind of a throwback. This is a truck spam list. Just off the bat, you're going to see that now. We have the Beast Snaggle Boys, of course, for the Beast Boss, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 Infantry Boys, and then the Flash Gits, okay? So here, then we get Gretchen, 3 units of Storm Boys, 1 brick or 1 big unit of Squig Hog Boys for that 1 Naban Smasher Squig, another scoring unit or screening unit in the Bikers, and then here we get just 6 trucks, okay? It's not 9 trucks, it's 6. I really do like the War Bikers. If you're getting into the Eldar matchup, what you really want to pay attention to is if they do have a Yinkarn and they're looking to put indirect into you, you can't just leave your Grots back there. If you're going into Space Marines and they have Inceptors, you can't just leave your Grots back there. You understand? So sometimes a War Biker or a boy truck will actually be important to leave in your backfield for certain matchups, of course, not always. But War Bikers also helpful for scoring potential, okay? Flash Gits as a whole are great for when someone is you're going into another combat army and you leave them in the open knowing that they don't have a lot of firepower themselves and hitting them with that overwatch when they're trying to countercharge you and get into your staging units. So we can now, with that in mind, let's look into some of his matchups of what his tech pieces were, right? So right off the bat, I would say that this wasn't the most competitive list, but it's important to pay attention to Tyranids. That's why I want to bring it up. The reason I say it's not competitive is because it's Crusher Stampede. Crusher Stampede is definitely the least meta version of the Tyranids list, and that's okay. But we're looking at remember what I said, we're looking at the data slate, the data sheets, that we can pay attention to what's being rounded out and being brought to the forefront in the meta. That way we can be aware of it as Orc players. We got the Neural Tyrant. A lot of people like him for his ability to mess with leadership and cause battle shock tests. We have the Winged Hive Tyrant, not my what I would say. Hive Tyrant on foot is much more important. Then we have 2 units of Barbgants, 3 Exocrines. Exocrines are going to be about every list you're going to see on Tyranids as a whole, whether it be 2, but you're going to see 3. Only 1 Harlspecs. I was a little surprised to see that. Usually you see more because they're so dirt cheap. 2 Malicept, 3 Maliceptors. Maliceptors are very important for Orc players to pay attention to, as the fact that they have a different kind of durability when they're, at least when they're in Invasion Fleet, they can get that 5 of Feel No Pain as well. But in this one, they cannot. But they have a built-in 4-up Invuln, as well as they have just flat-up 3 damage when it comes to their Psychic shooting and their melee potential. So Maliceptors are important, and they have the -1 to hit, of course. Then we have the Neurogaunts, Pyrovores, and then the Zoanthropes for their shooting, their last cannons. They did get a point increase, so we're not seeing as many as them, but you're still going to bring them because they're so important, right? With that being said, he put up 95 points against that list, okay? Now, this is a bit of a wrench into the matchup, right? And that's why I thought it was interesting to bring it up. This list is no Catans allowed as a Necron list, and you're going to see this list is weird. So you have a Hexmox Destroyer, Luminor Caesaris, Nemesaur Zandrake, Orican the Diviner, Overlord, Plasmancer, and Silent King. What is happening? These are all just characters, right? But here you have 2 Bricks of Warriors, followed by the Reanimator, Crypto Thrall, of course, for the Warrior Bricks, and then just Locust Destroyers. Boom. That's the whole list. What I'll say right now is this most likely we have to know what the mission is that will matter. And what we seen on that last list is he doesn't have anything to directly kill the Brick of Warriors at all in one shot, as well as the characters such as the Silent King do have potential to kill, buff, and be a real nuisance for those little bit of Orc killing units that he does have. So if the Necron player got to where he wanted to be, he just constantly put up enough points. He probably wasn't prepared for this awkward matchup. Maybe he wasn't used to the reanimating Crypto Thralls with their 4-up Feel No Pains and then coming back to life. So, and Necrons are just going to keep regenerating. They're going to regenerate when you fight them at the end of your turn. They're going to come back on their turn. It's going to be a lot. And you're regularly about 7 warriors are going to come back if they're using their strat and everything like that, right? So what's interesting is this Necron player actually got like 29th, I believe, in the event. He didn't even get into the top 25 yet. He did give us a loss. So that's why you got to keep in mind, guys, even if an army is not necessarily the most meta, you need to take it serious with the faction, because those kind of players are looking to bring you down, not because they're malicious, but because when you're going to a weird skew list, you're kind of there to go 300 I mean 500, which means you win about half your games, lose half your games, and that can kind of bring people down if you're not prepared for just overall what a faction does and their strengths, or if you brought a skew yourself, such as truck spam, right? But going into the third list, he ended up going into what was used to be known as the big dominant faction, the Eldar. Okay, but has a little bit of a difference to it. So we have the Artark Wayleaper, of course, Death Jester, Spirit Seer. He's used not all the time on the list, but he's very common. 3 Fire Prisms here for their guns potential. Rangers. So you can see this. What I'm going to say now is this Eldar list just brought a bunch of small things for scoring, and in hopes that it had enough guns to kill you. So we had Rangers, Shadow Specters, Warp Spiders to get into your backfield, and then Wind Riders, right? So Eldar players are thinking, hey, maybe I need to get more scoring potential, not always worried about just delivering guns. And in this matchup, it wasn't in his favor. And then he has 1 unit of Wraith Guard, as I've said several times. If you're going against Eldar and they do have Wraith Guard, we actually have a good chance as them into them as an Orc player, okay? And that showed here as he put up 83 points into this Eldar list and ended up winning. Fantastic. Going into his 4th matchup, we're going to go over Ryan Maya. This was a World Eaters list, like I said, okay? And this isn't like and if you paid attention, Art of War did Charity Hammer. He broke down over their Charity Hammer as a whole. I'm not going to copy Charity Hammer for that reason, and it had a weird, like, how you accessed everything. It wouldn't be as easy for us to show and project. But that had a different kind of World Eaters list that was also kind of relevant. But this is a smaller version of that. So we have Angron, Lord Avocado, World Eaters Demon Prince. Now, I think this guy right here is slept on a lot of times when you go into a World Eaters players. They do not utilize the fact that he gives a 4-up invuln aura and that he could become very durable, getting a 2-up save and having damage. Then we have what I like to call indirect melee. If you're familiar why I call him that is because this boy, Master of Executions, is essentially designed to destroy almost any character in the game because of that Berserker Glaive, right? So he fights first, he has precision, he re-rolls against characters, and that Berserker Glaive gives him a silly amount of damage as well as he has a devastating. So what he's looking to do is put about damage 4 dev wounds into you and just destroy your characters with his boatload of attacks, and he can obviously get to split exploding 6s, so sustained hits. So the Master of Execution is essentially almost always killing whatever character he's fighting, okay? Then we have, maybe not Mouse, haha. Then we have the Jackals. So the Jackals are important because they're great screening units for that World Eater Demon Prince when you start to string them out along their backfield. Now the Chaff has a 4-up invuln and a 5-up field no pain. We have a Brick of the Khorne Berserkers. Most likely, he's with the Master of Executions here. The reason for that is that's actually just to keep him safe, because really the whole point of the World Eater is he's trying to find your most killy character unit on the list and go in there and gut out your characters and try to really dismember that unit, that synergy you have there. He's really good against Necrons and very annoying. Then we have 2 small units of Zerkers, and 8 bounds, and then boom, just Khorne Lord of Skulls making his list up there. This is the only little bit shooting here. Like I said, totally playable, but as we'll talk about later, I think allied into Brigands is more powerful unless you're gonna have a lot all pressure, meaning multiple of these Lords of Skulls. Okay. World Eaters need to be paid attention to as an Orc player, as they have similar rules to us, but theirs can be brought up as the player kind of sees sufficient, even though they're like, oh, I have to roll for it. Chances are they're going to roll good enough to pick. And they're going to have those rules for most of the game. So they have sustained hits. They can choose to have sustained hits. They can choose to all have 6 that feel no pains. They can choose to advance and charge. They can choose to fight in death. I believe they have the roll for it in the 4+. But the point is that they're trying to play a similar game to us in a different way with smaller units and somewhat more reliable killing, as their units do at least have AP and different damage. Okay, and don't worry, chats, I'll go right over to you after we go over this list. It's because I wanted to cover 4 lists today, but I also don't want to take longer than a whole entire hour because I want this to be not boring for y'all. Oh, sorry, I didn't even show the score. He ended up getting 79. Not a very high scoring list. That's probably what stopped him from being up higher up on this list. But he, it is what it is. You don't have to always score 100 to be a good player. Now, this is hilarious. A guard list. I don't hear no bell. This is guard is trying to find their place. I think they're going to be taking more into tanks, and I think that's what happened here. So we have the platoon commander, regimental engine seer, tank commander, and Ursula Creed. Cadians, and then Catachans, and then some more Cadians. Chimera, Basilisk, a little bit more indirect still, a little bit of indirect here. Hellhound's probably the best transport maybe in the game, possibly, but definitely in their faction. And then some Lehman Russes with Demolishers, and then Scions for their scoring potential. I'm not seeing exactly the synergy here, but for them to even get this matchup, most likely this guard player at least did all right. All right. I don't think this is going to be one of the factions that we have to worry about as orc players. That's why I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But he did end up getting 83 points on that. So he did only drop one game, and it was to that weird Necron list, right? He ended up beating Eldar, even with their Wraith guard. He went into a weird Nids list. Not the most meta, but he did deal with Angron and this Lord of Skulls. Angron can straight up whiff sometimes in combat, you guys. But if the world leader person decides to put him in the middle of the table and really try to fight you and can select where he wants to fight, because he can advance and charge as well, then it could end up swinging the game, especially because he is slightly durable enough that you do need some anti-tank and potential to kill him, or anti-monster, right? So I just wanted to give him a shout out, just a different kind of thing. Not gonna spend a ton of time here, but great job. Not crazy scoring, but it is another version of orcs that we're seeing. Somebody drop Maz, threw Headwappa's Kill Chopper on there, still brought the truck spam, but decided I still need the squigs and the beast boss. And I think that is probably how I would run 6 trucks as well. And of course, the flash kits. Flash kits are making it on every single list that you're going to see in meta competitive play. Most people are not going to just be aware or really take you serious when you're saying this is my shooting unit, even though it's rerolling, it's a stay and hits 1. They're just not going to take it serious because they know you still hit on 5s, right? And you're going to catch people sleeping, and then boom, when you pop that ammo run, getting lethal can really swing the game, even from inside the vehicle, just through pure volume. You can take down things like, if you roll hot enough, even a Rhino you can take down. I mean, that happened to me even in the game. So yeah, pay attention to that. Now let me take a peep over here. Let me take a peep at the chat. But from here, we're going to go into what I like. Let me get rid of this because I don't want to get lost in the sauce here, guys. We're going to just go straight into I'm going to read your chats, but we're going to go into the showdown at Frogtown. This is interesting because Brad Chester actually did agree to do an interview with me. Shout out to Brad Chester. He's in our Discord. So we're going to go through everything, and then I'm going to try to give my evaluation from being a peasant, and then we're going to hear from the war chief. But let me look at what you guys are actually saying right now real quick. That way we can get crumping. All right. Let's see. Yo, dang, I'm late. But let's be real. It's never too late for the war. Yeah, for real, right? And I was a little late just trying to get my stuff together. Double Lord of Skulls with Angron, constant reviving. Yeah, of course. Sometimes though, the World Eaters player won't even choose to revive Angron because they'd rather just choose other abilities. Not saying they don't. I'm just saying that is matchup dependent. So don't be surprised if they hold them back and then decide to come in later and try to bully you, or just try to get to whatever your most killing unit is, draw your other killing units over there and try to take over the rest of the board. Mind you, they can advance and charge the entire game. Okay, so we're doing it once. They're trying to do it the whole game. We have the 1 turn 5-up invuln. They have a Demon Prince giving an aura of a 4-up invuln. And he's highly durable considering he has a 2-up armor save and he reduces damage. So depending on how good the World Eater player is and how cagey he is, sometimes they're just trying to wait on you as an orc player to burn your wall, and then they're trying to take over the board after you and really gut you. So pay attention to that, especially if they decide to have brigands. Brigands have 8 OC. That's annoying. And if you lose, just yell, whoa, flip the table over. Don't flip the table over, but definitely yell at all times, because why not? Orc shooterless viable or just really fun to re-roll to roll a bunch of dice? That's just honestly not viable, to be honest. It's really not. You can find some fun ways to play, of course. Go ahead and get a big brick, like someone said in our Discord, throw them on it with a weird boy, put them on top of some terrain, teleport on top of the terrain, and then get plunging fire. Right? You can end up doing that. I always keep trying to say, let's play with some Ludas. If you're playing terrain that gives plunging fires, go ahead and use some Ludas. That would be fun as well. That additional AP makes a huge difference, especially if you can oversee like the middle objective or some kind of objective with Ludas and get those rerolls. The damage will stack up. It's just a lot of people aren't playing with plunging fire, or they're playing with close off third windows because they were scared of knights. We'll see how the terrain mixes up or anything. All right, now let's get into showdown at Frogtown. So we're going to start with Joel Rommel first, and then we'll get into Brad Chester. Joel Rommel's list. It is different than Brad Chester's, and it was a bit fun too. So we have I'm gonna make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, cool. We have the Beast Boss, just like I said before. Beast Boss, you're gonna just need him. I tried to make lists without him, and then I was like, never mind. Why? Beast Boss on Squigosaur here. Again, we see him. I've always been someone who said, hey, let's get the Navon Smasher Squig in there. But see, people seem to be just going into him because they want more damage, because now we're seeing maybe a bit more vehicles than even before. So yeah, it's totally viable either way. I'm still a little bit more in favor of Maz, but the more games you play, the more you realize that Mog is not reliable for damage output. Then you have Naban Smashaquig, Naban Smashaquig, and then the War Boss. Of course, I love me the War Boss. Right here, just battle line, 1 unit, 2 units of Gretchen. That's what I would suggest minimum you take. Not that I'm telling you what to do, just my minimum suggestion. I'm a big fan of what we call the scalpel unit around here. As you always know, I constantly remind us that we have low AP, and sometimes you'll suffer for that. I'm a fan of bringing knobs because they do give you that -2 AP, and they have a boatload of attacks. Also, I think something that's it's not on this list right now. I didn't see him. This list didn't actually bring Captain Badrock, interesting enough. But when you get these knobs in here and you get Captain Badrock somewhere near the enemy that they want to fight as well, considering everybody's in trucks and such, that -1 toughness all of a sudden makes it so knobs can punch up into a couple different kind of monsters. So don't forget that tech piece as well. If you're going into someone and you're like, oh, I might want that aura, because he does reduce the toughness by 1. Then we got 2 units of Storm Boys. That's another minimum I would take 2, if not 3. And then boom, all the Squig Hog Boys. He brought just 3 bricks of Squig Hog Boys. So we seen the truck spam. Now we're back here with the Squig Hog spam. And then just 1 unit of bikers. The fun part about this list is he brought Grot Tanks. Grot Tanks are highly viable. They're fast. They have ablated wounds, meaning that they have a good amount of wounds in the unit, but they're spread between different models. Therefore, an enemy can't just one-shot and get a bunch of return on investment for their shooting all the time. And rockets are great, right? We love rockets. And then just 2 trucks. 2 trucks. The 2 trucks, as you can see, 1 was for the knobs and 1 is for the Beast Naga and the Beast Boss. So keep that in mind. This list does not have Captain Badrock, does not have flash kits, but it does have what I call the Scalpel unit. And of course, it keeps the Beast Boss. That is not going anywhere. Okay. Going into Joel Rommel, just quick look, 100, 96, and then dropped 2 games, but scored 100. Still did this well, and you'll see why. So his first matchup is T-Sons. So T-Sons are one of those factions right now that everybody's just kind of poo-pooing. They're very upset because they think they got her nerfed very, very hard. And I wouldn't say they're necessarily wrong, but I'm not sad for them. Okay, so we got Armin, Magnus the Red, Exalted Sorcerer on Disc. Exalted Sorcerer on Disc. These are Zeech, and Exalted Sorcerer on Disc. Okay, so the list, an Infernal Master, another Infernal Master, another Infernal Master, and then a Demon Prince. So this person just decided, I don't care about the points increases. I'm just going to take all the characters and still put them everywhere. I think that's not going to be helpful to them. Then we have the Zangor line, Zangor Lawton. Of course, this Thousand Suns Forge Fiend, that's very important. I do think this is actually an excellent unit. I'd bring it. He brought another one. Some Rhino right here, and then he went straight into the Changeling as a ally. So it's an odd list. I don't think this is the most powerful or this is not what the meta is going to be for T-Sons, but this guy was trying his heart out, and for trying his heart out, he got stomped out, and he 100 points put up on them. So let's go into the next matchup. So Tyranids with the Vanguard, right? Vanguard, I think, is one of those. It's going to be good for like being tricky, maneuvering around the battlefield, big brain kind of playing. But as I'm just going to spoil it now, I think people are going to either go keep with the Hive invasion fleet, or they're going to go into Nexus. I really think if they don't choose any of those, they could choose to kind of do the one that eats everything. But still, I think this is for big brain players, but when they go into NIDS versus NIDS, people who decide to tech more into either Invasion's fleet or Nexus will probably end up winning in this matchup. So still fun. People, of course, are trying to figure out the codex. So you have the Brood Lord, Death Leaper. Death Leaper is pretty good value for his points. Gargoyles are very, very much annoying. They get to move multiple times. So pay attention to your Gargoyles. They're going to try to steal your objectives. They're going to just be a nuisance. And that's where something like a Flash Gate could come into play and overwatch them and solve that problem real quick. Then you got Barbgonst, Biovores, Gene Stealers. Gene Stealers I don't think are very powerful right now, so it's interesting to see them on the list. Maliceptor, only 1. And then Neurolictors. These Neurolictors are very annoying because they cause Battle Shock. So pay attention that they're going to be possibly on list. They're going to stand and touch objectives, try to cause you to induce Battle Shock. Then you have the Norn Emissary. So he only has 1, but still, I have a feeling that lists are going to take 2. Just putting it out there. But even 1 on the list is going to be important. If you don't know what the Norn Emissary does, I believe he's T11. He has about 6 attacks that are damage 3, and then he has about 4 more that are damage 2. He gets a ability in his on his data sheet that he chooses an objective, and then when he gets to that objective, he gets a 5 of Feel No Pain, and he gets, I believe, 15 OC. So most Tyranid players are just like, I'm going to run right there and just place him there. He's going to stay there the whole game. Or you're going to have enough firepower or punching ability to take him out. Ripper Swarms, this is what they're relying on to do for their scoring potential. Put them in outflank. Trigon, I'm not a fan of, but here it is. And as you see, remember, this was the Vanguard detachment, and that's why you can see these Von Ryan Leapers. And then 2 units of Zone Tropes, because no matter what, you need those shooting las cannons for Tyranids, I guess. Overall, it's fine list, but Joe Rommel handled that with a quickness. But now we get into the head scratcher here, right? We get into someone that we decided as a community to watch out for, which is Tau, and we were right. Tau made a splash overall in the meta, and just because they got such a huge point decreases, and like I always say, orcs don't have good armor saves, therefore just throwing dice at us, just like we like to throw dice at you, does work against us. So we have Commander Farsight. He did end up losing this game. Commander Farsight, Commander Shadow Sun, Cold Star Battlesuit, and then he brought Broadside Battlesuit, Crisis Battlesuit, Big Brick. They're always going to bring about 2 of these in every Tau list, so just be expecting of it. Now, this was the weird one. Skyray Gunship. So this isn't actually a flyer, but it does fly. They do get the potential to like reroll a hit roll or a wound roll. Really, this is all about just putting more dice into you. That's really what it's about. Tau is sitting there with a ton of firepower and small units. These are cheap for what they're trying to do. And then, of course, they get their missiles. They can choose to put more damage into you. But this was the weird part. They have 2 Sunshark bombers. These are actually flyers. Okay, flyers seem to be kind of, at least in Tau, they're starting to make their way onto the scene. Really trying to be important to them as they're looking to hide, then come in with their flyers, shoot you up, and continue to do that gun line, use their maneuverability. And then a Tetris is actually a Forge World model. It's like two guys or 2 whatever they are, like little mech suits. Not super durable, but they're durable enough that you're going to have to put at least a little bit of investment. So they'll probably put them in corners or trying to throw them away early, or you maybe even stand on their home objective. So he did end up losing this game 65, as you can see. Tau is going to be something we have to pay attention to and start teching into, or be very aware of what they can do and play the mission correctly, right? Now we're going into his next 100-point score, which was against Grey Knights. So Grey Knights are going to be very important, but I think Grey Knights are still going to have that same problem of they don't have tank killing potential, but they're very much good at killing groups of boys or infantry as a whole. So we have Castle and Crow, the Grandmaster, and then Kaldor Dragor. I forgot exactly which one of these dudes gives it, but one of them it sticks onto a unit of Termies and then gives them like +3 to their charges. I believe it's Kaldor Drago. So pretty much Termies are coming down. They can come down turn 1, get a free charge in. Then if you fall back or do anything, they'll just jump back into the warp or whatever they're doing. So we got the Brotherhood Terminator Squad, Strike Squad. These are pretty much just like the basic Marines. They have a 2-up armor save, some bolter, a little bit of fighting here. And then he brought the Paladin Brick, right? The Purgation Squad is this is the ones that have the I believe this is the anti-infantry 2+. Just a ton of firepower, and these guys are, see, he brought 3 of them. Oh, wait. Or is it Purifier Squad? It might be the Purifier Squad, excuse me. But these are their gun platforms, essentially. They're trying to shoot you, put some firepower into you with their new units because they just have so many more points on their list. But I truly still believe that running more Terminators is actually better for them. So you still have to be aware of that. And then the new ally chaff is Voids Men at Arms again, blah, blah, blah. Of course, we're aware of that. So this was one of those armies that they want to jump up, pick your army apart in pieces, really try to deal with you as they see fit. But if you're bringing just bricks, squig hog boys, you don't care about their small arms fire necessarily. When you do make combat with them, you can still kill them. Only one of their units in an armor of contempt between the Paladins and the Terminators. You don't even have to care about that because you can just start to kill everything else, right? So that being said, he occupied the table and put up 100 points against this Grey Knights list, but I don't think it was the most optimal Grey Knights list you're going to see. Not that it's a bad one. I'm just saying that there, because as you can see right here, there's the Grey Knights player. Bam. Right. Still Still an excellent player, but we're just saying as we go up into what people are going to bring more and more, you're going to see that they're going to probably bring more Terminators even, but still bring those gunline unit potential units. They're just not going to, in my opinion, bring too many Strike Marines. Now, as you can see here, this was the final matchup. He went into the War Chief. So let's look at the War Chiefs list, and then we'll transition over to the War Chiefs matchups. So right here we got Brad Chester. He has the Beast Boss with the Cunning Babru, ability to fall back. The Beast Boss again. Captain Badrock, Mazrog Scragbag, and then the Naban Smasher Squig with that Wild Skill Choppa. This is very similar to, not that I'm saying we're the same, because we're definitely, he's way better, but this is kind of similar to what my HQs kind of end up looking like right now. I don't bring 2 Beast Bosses though. I only have 1. And then the 2 units of Snaggas, 1, 2, 3 trucks. Then he brought a Death Dread. That was a bit of a curveball. When we do the interview, we can find out how that did for him. Maybe he was trying to induce Battle Shock. Really, he just wanted that AP and flat 3 damage. I can understand both of those. You know, so it is what it is. He brought that. Flash Gits, of course. Then 2 units of Gretchen. That's what I see as the minimum. And then this is also how I like to break down my squigs, as I've said several times before. 1 brick with the knob, and then these 2 are what I call skirmishers, right? They're cheap, 110 points for that point cost. You're not going to get another unit that is skirmishing nearly as well across the game. So Squig Hog Boys are great for that. And the small units. And then 1, 2, 3 units of Storm Boys, just like last time when he ran it. So he went into Joel Rommel, as we've seen here, and Brad Chester did end up winning here. Going straight up to Jad, he put up 95 points into Joel Rommel. So Joel Rommel, you still did a great job. Nothing to cough at, nothing to put your head down for when you lose it to Brad Chester. He is an excellent player. And as you can see here, just giving it a quick peep, Death and Glory, Death and Glory, Death and Glory. You know, as we said before, he has his competitive channel, and it's just full of just competitive as a whole. It's not even necessarily just orcs. Of course, he's an orc, but the rest of the guys are there, and they were trying to beat up the meta, as you can see. Before I go straight into Brad Chester, I'm going to peep over at the chats one more time, make sure I didn't miss anything from you guys. Remember, after Brad Chester's list, there is the flavor list, of course, that I always like to talk about. But I don't want to leave you guys in the ether not talking. Let's see. Boop. Mech with the force field and cunning. Just obliterate infantry units. Okay. I don't know. Are you saying because the mech gives them the 4-up invul? I mean, yeah, I really do like that when they're trying to obliterate it. That's been something the big boss, has been talking about. So yeah, I think the mech can be slept on if you're starting to bring bricks, and he's very, very dirt cheap. Oops, I just clicked that thing, right? I just clicked that. Sorry. I'm definitely bringing looters with the intention of capitalizing on plunging fire. Yeah, if you're gonna play looters, which I actually do think you could, and a lot of people go, well, if the enemy wants to, they could just shoot that. Yeah, but remember, orcs are a pressure army. Most of the rest of our stuff is coming forward. Any firepower they're throwing back to your 110 point backline unit, you know, under 110 backline unit, you're just like, sure, bro, go shoot those boys back there because we're all in your face right now. The whole point is that if you can oversee an objective, they get reroll hits, strength 8 -2, and then 2 damage, right, if they have plunging fire. So that's the kind of playability they have. Not that I'm saying they're going to be meta, but you know your terrain, you know your meta. And that's kind of like what you like to keep in mind here, right? Whoa! Sorry, I just had to get my wall in. You know, it's been about 5 minutes. All right, so let's see. We got, when I field Mazrog, I do it because he's a tank, yes, and gets out key targets. He always soaks up damage, a ton of damage, and if he spikes damage, it's just a bonus. That's exactly how I see him as well, right? He's usually the one that people kind of prioritize, as they know is data sheet. They just don't realize what happens when you actually roll, that it can swing in the direction. But he's usually getting the Artis Nail Strap put on him, and he's sucking up the fire, so your Squig Hog Boys don't have to. And that's exactly how I use him as well. And to touch things, right? Touchy. Taylor Smith. Ooh. Maz is definitely tanky. Yes, he is. James, you're back with your 18 Def Copters. Sorry, there's no 18 Def Copter list on today, but you can show me one. Oh, yeah, here you go. The boys attached to the mech. Yeah, you can go in there and blend if you have boys that have a 4-up invul and the shooting and such. Let's see. I second the Def Copters. Fantastic. I'm glad that everybody's in the Def Copters. Let me see you run them. All right, now let's get into the War Chief and how he did real quick. Like he said, he's going to give us an interview, he said, as well. So that'll be interesting to actually hear what he says after I say whatever I'm going to say. So let's look into the first matchup. Again, here we are with World Eaters. Like I said, guys, pay attention to World Eaters, just because even though we, in my opinion, still have a pretty good advantage if they're using Angron, if they don't use Angron, they start to use allies. They start to pick other different tech pieces. I think they can still do actually very excellent. Karn the Betrayer, I'm not into him. I think he's just a little too slow, and the Master of Executioner essentially does his job much better. Lord Avocado, and the World Eaters, Lord on Juggernaut. So this looks like this is more about like a pressure. He's going to come forward with his characters, try to advance and charge. Possibly turn 1, most likely turn 2 into you. This is just all pressure. He got the Cornzerkers, Rhino, 8-bound, the Exalted 8-bound, I believe, right? Or the 8-bound champion. These are the bigger ones with the bigger hits. Bigger ones. The harder hitting ones, I believe. Here we go. Sorry, these are the harder hitting ones. The Exalted 8-bound. So he just brought Exalted, and 8-bound. Keep in mind that 8-bound actually give an aura of reroll 1s to wound. So it actually helps with World Eaters as a whole in their offensive output. Like I said, World Eaters trying to do similar things to Orcs, but their damage output is a bit more reliable. And delivering 8-man unit of 8-bound, as long as you're not getting shot to heck, right? Because once they start getting shot, they just fall apart. If you're playing against World Eaters, throw your Squig Hog bombs into the 8-bound, you'll feel good about that. But when these guys do get into combat, they have a ton of attacks that are pretty good damage. And of course, they have a decent amount of AP. And like I always said, this guy I call indirect combat because as soon as he makes it into combat with you, he's essentially just killing whatever he wants. He's fighting first. It feels the same as indirect shooting. But luckily, Orcs can fight in death, and that's usually what I end up doing. Watch out for the reduced damage by 1, though. But Brad took this guy, and as you can see, this was actually Brad's lowest scoring game, right? That's just the point that I'm trying to make here. Is I'm not saying World Eaters are going to take over the meta. I'm saying for Orc players, be aware of World Eaters, learn their rules, understand that they're trying to do what we do. They're trying to do what we do with more expensive units, with more reliable damage output, but they can't trade as well, and they don't have enough chaff. But I think as soon as they start dropping stuff like Angron, and they, at least in my opinion, and start bringing more smaller units, even a bit more cultists, bring that Demon Prince, that's what I think is a little bit more viable as a World Eaters list. And of course, like I said, allies. So we're going to go into the second matchup. He ended up going on 2 Nids. Another, this is the Invasion Fleet, right? This is what I think is a little bit more reliable and meta. So we have but again, we see the Broodlord, though. A little bit surprising, but it is what it is. Maybe I have to figure it out. Maybe he does something a little better than I thought. But I think Gene Stealers just aren't that good right now. So I'm not really understanding that. We have the Death Leaper. He's pretty good. Hive Tyrant. This is what I usually assume is going to be on every list. Just the Hive Tyrant with adaptive biology. Even just him alone is excellent. And then the Swarm Lord. I'm not sure if he's necessary, but he's still very useful, at least in Invasion Fleet. Then we have the Biovore 2-3 Exocrines. Like I said, if you don't see 2 Exocrines, you're probably seeing 3. But you're not going to see 1, you're not going to see none. So the Gene Stealer unit right here. 2 Auro Specs. Auro Specs are just so cheap for what they're doing. They have a good volume of attacks. And you give them how Feel No Pain. You're just completely getting a points return for this. 125 points is necessarily nothing. 3 units of Ripper Swarms again for the scoring, and then 2 units of Zone. 3 units of Zone Tropes again, because you're not going to leave home without your last cannons and blasts, right? As a Tyranid player. Even then, though, Brad put up 87 points into them. As a whole, I don't see anything here in that list that would have given Brad any issues. He has enough squigs, he has enough characters to kill them, enough pressure, small enough to take over the board and not have outflank. So I wasn't surprised by that. But this was what actually I was interested in. So this is a Chungus is what they call this list. And actually there's someone near in my meta as well that's running almost something very similar to this, which is how I became aware of it first. And then now when I looked over this Frog Town, I realized here it is again. So I thought it was important to talk about. Synaptic Nexus, I think, is what they're going to end up going with. It is a bit more a bit harder sometimes to play with because their rules are one-off, but they do have access to reduce AP by 1. Which is important when you start bringing some certain units here. So you have the Hive Tyrant, and then you have Old One Eye. So Old One Eye is healing himself, and he has great damage. Here you can see 2 units of Gargoyles, as these guys are very annoying. They're going to move. They're pretty dirt cheap, and they can move multiple times pretty much in a turn, so it's quite annoying. Now we have Biovores, another 2 units of Exocrines, and then 2 Maleceptors. I think as soon as you see 2 on the list, that you start paying attention because they're trying to hold both sides of the board and at least not deal with fighting units. And then here again, 2 Neurolictors. Then you have the Norn Emissary. Is this the guy I was talking about, Thick Boy? So Norn Emissary is, of course, going to pick middle objective or whatever one he feels like to in the middle of the board. Throw Maliceptor near him, try to keep him alive. And then the Zoanthropes to follow him and try to get some guns downfield so you can't gun him. Only one Ripper unit. And 3 units of those own brain bugs, right? So he called it Chungus most likely because One Eye is still has good chunk to him and fighting capability. He has the 2 Exocrines that are pretty cheap for what they're trying to do in their durability. And then he brought 2 Maliceptors. And then Norm Emissary is really the only thing chunky here, but I wouldn't be surprised if people just were like, well, I'm not going to bring Harrowspecs and maybe one less Zoanthropes or whatever it may be and try to fit another or maybe even decide I'm not going to take one on One Eye. I'm just going to take more Norn Emissaries. I could see that happening. And I wouldn't be surprised. But Brad dropped this, I think, by only not too many points. I think it was 5. Yeah, he lost. Right here's a Tyranid player right here. And it's someone he knew. So that means he knew what Brad was trying to do. That's obviously going to be a factor when it's someone you're familiar with. But it was a 5-point game. He did end up losing that. That was the one loss he had. And then we'll go into his last matchup for us because we know what his actual last matchup was T-Suns. So he pretty much came down with the vengeance right here. He said, T-Suns, you got nothing on me, because he was able to beat T-Suns pre-nerf. So post-nerf, Orcs are just running game on them. It was close before they got nerfed. Now it's like we have the advantage for the most part. So we'll look at the list. Armin on disc, Exalted Sorcerer, Infernal Master, Infernal Master, Infernal Master, T-Sun, Sorcerer. My goodness. God, these guys on their hero hammer, man. Like, I thought they would learn. When you gonna learn, kid? All right. Rubric Marines, a brick of your Rubric Marines, of course, with their Warflamers. I think that's their best profile. And then another unit of big Marines Warflamers. Mutilax Vortex Beast, man, it's pretty cool. Then we have the Zangor Enlighten, the Blue Scribed, and then right here, guys, Brigands. At least he's trying by bringing Brigands. Didn't help him though, right? Didn't help him. Sorry, I'm gonna take this off. So that's what Brad ended up running over. And then, like I said, he ran into Joel Rommel that last game and ended up being Joel Rommel. So I'll just pull up his list one more time so we can get a little peep after now you've seen his matchups. So he does have 2 beast bosses. So he's not necessarily scared of these monsters, right, that are coming out. And then he has Mazrog, and like we said in chat, Maz can, when he does, especially when he gets his charge off, you can start to kind of hope for some damage there. He's not going to straight up kill things like monsters most of the time, but if they're already kind of hurt, he could do some work. Captain Badrock, when I talk to Brad, he pretty much says this is almost always his MVP unit. And a lot of other good players are saying that too. That Captain Badrock with the flash gets is the MVP unit. It's about skill when you're using them, though. I've been using them. So far, they've been doing performance. But I think I personally am not using them even to their max capability. I'm so focused on them kind of staying alive because how expensive they are. In reality, you just want to set them and stage them so you can constantly be ready to overwatch or take advantage of that -1 durability. And then you have the Knob on Smash Squid with Edwapa Skill Chopper. That's how I like to run it too. And then only 3 chucks. I think my lists are pretty much about 3 chucks now too. Sometimes 4, but usually for me, it'd be like a Beast Boss, Snobs, and then Flash Gets or something like that. The Death Dread, like we said, this was here. I don't know if this is going to continue to be on his list. I'd love to find out in the interview. And then everything else is just kind of small, right? Storm Boys, Squig Hog Boys. I'm surprised he doesn't like bring 1 biker unit. I really find utility in just having 1 biker unit, like I said, for the Eldar or the Inceptors or whatever it may be, something that's a little thicker. But maybe he decides I'm just going to leave Squig Hog Boys in my home field objective. I did it against Grey Knights before, and it ended up working out because he just didn't want to put anything cheap over there. And with how big their bases are, I still able to screen. But bikers can kind of do that to an extent, right? So yeah, not kill, but they can screen. So yeah, that's it for the GT list. As you can see, Orcs did good. Look at right here. We got Joel and Brad right here. And why I wanted to bring him Joel is because he's not a part of Death and Glory. So I just wanted to show that even though he's not a part of Death and Glory, you can see the similarities with this list. And he's still back into the Squig bricks, right? So we've seen on the first list we covered, it's trucks with just 1 unit of Squig brick. Then you see the second list we covered was just 18 Squigs straight out the gate. And then the third list is a bit more relatable to me personally, is you're bringing the Flash Gits, you're bringing some Mazrog for the tanking capability, only bringing 1 brick of Squigs, and then everybody else is kind of for scoring, running around, holding the board, which is how I personally like to play Orcs as well. I think it's important that we play the primary and we take over board control, not try to literally go stat for stat with people. Because if you do, then you kind of also really have to hope that you don't get outplayed, like you don't get your unit touched, you don't get move block, stuff like that, and are outmaneuvered, and you have to hope that you don't run into any of your predators, right? Even though right now, I don't think off the top of my head, not too many straight real predators for orcs, just matchups that become difficult. Okay. I'm going to take a peep at the chat, and then I'll show you guys my favorite town list right here. Of course, it's an RTT, but that's the point, guys. It's about fun, right? This will be the RTT list. Let me see what you got to say. Of course, more death copters. Get out here. He said, leave the 8-bound alone. They did nothing wrong. Having auras to reroll ones is doing something wrong, right? But as a whole, they're just great targets for squig bombs. All right. Let's see. What about 18 kilocans? 18 kilocans? I'll bring this back to a list that I seen a while ago. Of course, it was at least a month and a half ago, if not 2 months ago. I did see someone bring the kilocans, but they also brought gas, which was interesting. I think just as we are at the meta right now, there's just I'm not sure if they have their place, because when you're going 4s and 4s, it just swings damage, and then they can't get +1 to their toughness, or like the artist nail strat, and they're T6. They are at that like line where you want them to be for toughness, at least for the most part, but I would have liked to see them 1 pib higher, to be honest, as I'm not really understanding how a dude on a squig, even if it is a thick orc boy, is tougher than like actual plated armor, even if a kilocan's in there. Even though it has a 3-up armor save, I'm just saying they should be about the same toughness, then make them a bit more appealing, because there are flamers that can chip down kilocans when they're T6. There are some other guns that can chip them down. And then there's just some straight up anti-tank weapons that are strength 12, which means they're ruining the kilocans on 3. So then it becomes too efficient into them. That's why I think they're not really finding their place. And the fact that you're not anyway giving them +1 to hit, even in melee, and I think that's very necessary if you're trying to enjoy and optimize their melee potential. So I don't know about 18, but I definitely love mine because I own about 9. Ooh! Loving the list ideas. Also looking forward to getting that t-shirt. Oh yeah, here's a, so let me show off my sexy orc body. No, I'm just kidding. Here's our little, this is not our merch shirt yet, but this is my first version of our shirt. It's really interesting. On the back it says, I'll show you at the end. That's weird. But thank you for bringing that up. We need that t-shirt for October. That's actually a great idea, as it takes some work to get it done, you know, and we're gonna try to hammer it out to see what's appealing to you guys. In Discord, of course, let me know what you guys think. Sorry, I got to get that wah in. Maximo, thanks. And you know, if you guys don't ever hear me wah now, just put it on chat. I'm gonna wah all over the place. All right, and then right here, oops. So this was something that was a little bit fun. So let's look at his list, and then we'll actually look at something that was a little surprising in this first matchup. So here we have 3 beast bosses. Straight up, this guy's like, if you got a tank, I'm crumping it. And then he has the beast boss on Squigosaur and Mazrak's crack bag. So even with the point increase, this guy was like, this git was like, no, we bringing the grump, we bringing the beakies. All right. So he's trying to crump everything, trying to destroy the armor, just bypass it. I don't care about beaky armor. Just wants to punch it through it with the dev wounds. And he brought Mazwag as well, and then he brought Nabat Smash Squig. As you can see and assume, this is going to be a straight up Squig Wah. There's going to be a Beast Snacker Wah. And the reason for that is not the 18 Squigs. It's actually because, here you go, 3, 1, 2, 3, Beast Snacker boys. It's because he brought kill rigs. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. I love me some kill rigs. Only 1 truck, probably for the left dot gets. Then we have 1 unit of Gretchen, like I said, 2 squig kill rigs, and then he brought just enough squigs, in my opinion, with the 6-man unit and then 2 3-man units. But as you can see, the list did get quite elite, is what I would say, right? Mind, just think about your profile and when you're taking over the battlefield or deploying with this list. You're running with these 2 big characters, but they're really not that big to take over the board. Only 1 Nava Smash a Squig, so those 3-man units are just running around by themselves, hoping that they can win any skirmishes they run to. And then these guys are actually in the kill rigs as well. So when you include the kill rig plus the beast boss plus the boys, that's 405 points. Okay, so in orcs are just like, usually we're not loving that. It's not that it's terrible. I'm just letting you guys know, keep that in mind, right? Your profile when you deploy is going to be small. Your ability to screen is going to be different than other orc lists. You're going to have to worry about maneuverability. But if you're going to an RTT, don't ever care to think too hard into it. Just have fun with what you got, and you can still have a great time. Now we'll look into the first matchup that he had that caught me a little off guard when I seen it, but not at the same time, right? T4 Drakari spam. Ugh. So we have the Beastmaster, the Homunculus, and then Cabalite Warriors, Rax. So this is, you can see there's not like too much spamming going on here yet. Only one Venom. And then did they have more Kronos than that? I'm surprised they didn't have more than that. The Mandrakes, this is their version of Scrim Machine, kind of getting into the board. Ravager, Reavers, Scourges, okay, here we go. Talos. So this is kind of like their thick, kind of their version of a Dreadnought. I guess you can kind of imagine it. So 1, 2, 3 Talos, of course. And then right here, Void Raven Bomber. So this guy just keeps coming back into anybody's nightmare who's played with Drukhari in the past, right? These guys used to be just like broken. Luckily, they're not now, but it's interesting that he brought it back to this list. And as you can imagine, by looking at that squig list, other than the Word Tower, which you could pre-measure, there's nothing that's going to really shoot that or deal with that as orcs as a whole. And then just one Solitaire. I don't necessarily know all of their ability, like as Drukhari, as they're just really popping up nowadays in the meta. But as you can see, these Scourges have Dark Lances. So they do have the damage capability to just start popping squigs if they can, or even start destroying that kill rig if they roll hot enough. So interesting. And they're just straight up garbage chaff units all over this lift, running over the board, trying to friggin' score, take up objectives, score secondary, stuff like that. And then he's going into what's the opposite of a typical orc list, an elite heavy kind of orc list. And he did end up dropping that game, losing that game for it to 54. And the Drukhari player ended up getting third. Okay. Oh, actually, what is this saying? Speaking of kill rigs, that new pig of Age of Sigmar dropped Saturday. I seen him today at the shop, and he will be easily pulling that. Oh, okay. Easily be pulling that rig. Okay, that's pretty dope. So if you want to Kitmasters kill rigs and not use that weird Rhino squig that they got going on, that's a good shout out by Chris. And if you guys know something about the Drukhari that I didn't say right there, feel free to let me know. So let's look at a second matchup. We have Ultramarines. Now, before you go scoff, mind you, Ultramarines did do well at another GT we covered, right? So Ultramarines have the potential because they have the 2 Oath of Moment. They have Gilliman, is why you're going to get the 2 Oath of Moments. And you can just declare something because it doesn't say that isn't even on the board necessarily. So you can, how it's worded, declare the transport and then the unit within the transport as well. So we have Terminator Captain. As you can see, Terminators are, if you haven't heard, they're kind of trying to make their comeback. I'm not sold on it yet, but here we are. Now, this is a match. This is actually a combo I've seen before personally. You have the Primaris Lieutenant with Bolter Discipline, and you're going to stick them with Hellblasters most likely. Big unit of aggressors as Space Marines are starting to tech into what they assume hordes are going to be, and aggressors seem just the best unit for that. They have a durability against hordes as they have a built-in T6. They have their gauntlets, and then if they have to, they can punch something. Eliminator Squad, Eradicator Squad. So this is a big brick of Eradicators. What Space Marines like these guys for, even though they have 18 inches, is the fact that they get to reroll hits and wounds into vehicles and monsters. But if you're trying to shoot Maz with that, and you just do Artist Nails, then it's on 6s, and you don't care. So this is the combo I was telling you about. You get the Lieutenant with the Hellblasters and Bolter Discipline. You're especially getting sustained hits 1 and lethal hits from the combination. And then I think you can actually up that to 5s with the strat. So this just becomes a voluminous amount of firepower. You can put about 25 wounds into Squig Hog Boy Brick with this kind of combination unit. So instead of having the weird indirect fire, whenever those guys were Dev Marines or whatever they were called. Sorry, I'm just forgetting their dorky names. You don't be surprised if you see some more Hellblaster squads. They are harder for them to deliver as Space Marine players. But they do have potential to put some straight up damage through volume into a lot of different units, like a Stompa or even a Kill Rig. They could just tear it down. You have an Incursor Squad, Infiltrator Squad, and then a Repulsor Executioner. That was interesting that they're trying to bring this guy back. Just a straight firepower. I'm not sold on it yet. I think if you're going to bring anti-tank as a Space Marine, just bring a Lancer. Just, but if they don't, then sucks for them. Because all these small arms fire, if you just use hard as nails or whatever they're shooting at, a lot of these things are going to end up wounding orc units on like 6s, like straight up, right? You're going to shoot at the Onslaught Gatling into some Squig Hog Boys, and it goes hard as nails, you're winning it on 6s. So I don't think this is the answer, and not something we should be too worried about. Another Terminator Squad right here, but these have bolters. I totally think the Thunderhammers and the Storm Shields are way better. You want the wounds, you want the damage potential, stuff like that. And then a Vanguard squad. So he's trying to bring something that's cheap to run around and have jetpacks, but I personally think Space Marines sleep on their ATVs and their speeders, as that's what you really want to kind of have on a Space Marine list and be worried about. If you see those on the term Space Marine list, kill them. That's their only scoring potential. But as you can see, he put up 100 points into that list as well. And then we'll look at his last matchup. Aiden Flynn. And here we are with World Eaters again. So we have Angron, World Eater, Lord on Juggernaut, and then World Eaters, Master of Executioner. So this guy's going to be on every list, and if he's not, I don't take the list seriously. Just saying that again. 1 unit of Jackals only, a big unit of Corn Zerkers, mold just for this guy, because really it's all about him surviving until he reaches his destination. And then 1 Rhino, 2 Rhinos, Exalted 8-bound, Mauler Fiend. This is a unit that I learned very quickly that is actually very useful. Mauler Fiend, with its, mind you, sorry, I should have said this earlier. World Eaters have a strat that allows them to auto advance 6. So mind you, they're advancing, charging, auto advancing 6 with something like a Mauler Fiend. So it's definitely putting up the pressure up the board. It's relatively cheap, and they can stack that advance and charge with the 6 up Feel No Pain. And that's usually what they're going to do if they have a Mauler Fiend. But I think they should have 2. So shout out to Chris. Yeah, so this is something you want to pay attention to. It's great for tank shock as well, if you ever see one of these. And that's what I mean when I'm talking about World Eaters, what they want to do. They want to do similar things to Orcs, but they have more elite, reliable ways of doing it, to be honest. The difference is we just play the mission better. That's really kind of what it comes down to. And the amount of 5 of Feel No Pains and the Squig Hog Boys and stuff can kind of swing that damage as well. So it's not like they just win. I'm just saying you have to understand how they play to play into them and beat them. But they do have tools, and the tools could be annoying, like advance and charging with these guys or 8-bound, etc. Then you see, as I said before, I think allies are very important for World Eaters, but I don't think this is the answer. You have 1, 2 units of Fleshhounds, and this is what I think is the answer. You obviously want some Brigands. Brigands hit on 2s. They bring the chain guns. That way they can have some small alarms fire. Not necessarily small alarms, but to us, or kind of is. And then they have their essentially Meltas with their dragon spears, 24-inch Meltas. So they're trying to pick up stuff as well. And then a War Dog. I don't know if he just ran out of points or what, why I didn't bring any more Brigands, but yeah, 3rd Brigand would have probably been most useful. He put up 100 points against this list. As you can imagine, with those kill rigs, the kill rigs aren't necessarily allowing you to kill the beast boss, and then once you kill the kill rig, the beast boss jumps out and just crumps like the Mauler Fiend. You'll probably beat the crap out of Handground to a certain extent. And then bringing them back doesn't really help them, because then the rest of your units, you just run around in the field, they screen the rest of the field. So as you can see with this list, the Squig list, it's fun, it's thematic, and it can definitely mess people up and catch them off guard. You just have so much strength, high damage. You have dev wound potential. You have durability and Feel No Pains all over the board, because the kill rig has it built in, the beast boss has it built in, the Squigs have them even better built in, and then you got Maz and Squig beast boss, right? And Squigosaur. But then you run into these MSU chaff units, and you just run out of resources, and you can't really beat them on the mission anymore. And of course, it comes down to what cards you're scoring too, right? So don't ever forget that. Oop, I'm just clicking everything right now. So let me see what you guys got to say real quick before I close this out, because I actually made it to 58 minutes, just like I wanted. Wanted to be about an hour. I don't want to take all your time or drag on. What I like to do here, the whole point of this, guys, is for you guys to see what's going on as Orc lists develop. When we first started doing this, we did it right off the rip when the meta started and tournaments started opening up. And the list looked much different. You've seen Gaz, you've seen Killer Cans, like I said. You've seen a lot of the Megatrack scraps, the Megatracks, the Forge World trucks. You've seen people trying to bring Mega Knobs more often, stuff like that. And now you can see that it's pretty consistent. Flash kits, Beast Snagga characters, trucks, and then some variety of, do I bring more trucks or do I bring more Beast Snaggas? One thing that has been a tech piece that I've seen several times used on successful lists that's interesting are the Grot tanks, though. I think their mobility and ablative wounds actually do matter and come into play. Let me pop this down. So remember, when you're doing these things, it's really what we're going for is not because I'm telling you copy these lists. Don't copy lists, because you're just not going to do that well, because you want to play to your style. But what you want to do is kind of get an idea of what's most popular being used right now, what's powerful, how it can be synergized, and what matchups to look out for when even these lists do run into other factions, even if it's not meta, right? We've seen that weird Necron list that ended up being a really popular good Orcs Truck Spam list. We've seen that weird Dark Eldar list beat what you would consider as a heavy squig, beast boss, anti-monster, destructive Orc list that ended up just being outmaneuvered and out scored, and that's different, right? So the whole point of these isn't really to tell you this, the meta do this. It's actually to show you the weaknesses to each version of our Orc archetypes. Because for the most part, when you get to the top, you see that there are slightly different variations and what are the different factions and ways your list can actually be countered. Keep that in mind. That way you're not caught off guard. Also, to give you some ideas, that's why I like to bring in the flavor list, right? You wouldn't have heard about kill rigs if I didn't look at RTTs. Some people don't take them seriously, but that's because you're taking the game too seriously. As a whole, it's a game. We're trying to have fun and we're trying to enjoy our factions with all the models we can, as many as we can, and bring thematic as we can. That's why I always entertain any kind of questions, even the hilarious 18 Def Coptas, even though it's hilarious. Shout out to Chris. Yeah, Chris is number 10 ranked World Eaters in the Midwest right now, and it should go better because his first performance was trash. Let's see here. There's more gets in here every wall Wednesday. It's very true, and I appreciate that's mostly from the community. Whether you guys show other orc players, whether you guys give it likes and just randomly throw a wall in the comment, that actually matters a lot for the algorithm. Because when we pull up the analytics, people are just finding us to the browsing thing. Because I don't spam this on social media platforms. I really just let it be word of mouth. If I'm a strong believer that if I'm bringing you some kind of value and you guys enjoy the community that's being formed, then as a whole, you'll show other orc players and it'll just kind of rise for the rise of the green tide. So I appreciate you. And yeah, more people are appearing and it's humbling. What secondary should we consider for fixed? Well, a lot of people would consider, what is it? Deploy, teleport, Homer, and cleanse, I believe, because if you're bringing a lot of chaff, you really want to consider those since you can constantly just keep doing them in the middle of the board, and orcs kind of want to occupy the middle of the board. It really just comes down to what your terrain is. Well, if you know that you don't have good terrain and you're playing on, I'm not sure if you would pick fixed. But you can pick fixed. I would just say as orcs, you don't need to, because you can do, we're really just trying to play the primary and the secondary mission at the same time through having a multitude of models available to score, whether it be a truck to run around and do a scoring, a biker unit, a grot unit. We have that already built into how our armies are functioned. We aren't necessarily the most killy or destructive faction right now in 40K as a whole. What we are doing and what we find success in is when people are looking to play the primary, then the secondary as cleanly as possible for as many turns as possible. And by the end of it, you've racked up a score high enough that the enemy can't catch up, even if you're almost tabled, right? So I don't advise fixed. I'm just telling you those are the ones I would say to do if you're set on doing them, but you have to tech into a list that can do it. And it's most likely going to have to be a lot of chaff. The green tide is also, yeah, it's very much growing. It's humbling and a great experience, right? Another wall. I just gotta get my walls in. I feel like I didn't wall enough this stream. And yeah, I miss seeing Gaz too. I do. It's just that with the proliferation of dev wounds, it kind of just ignores his Makarian vuln. And just to say, like, I know I've said that Mega Knobs can find their place because people, you could see on last week, people were bringing some Mega Knobs as with Tau coming in and their great volume of fire, Mega Knobs, and even the Leagues of Voltan, you might want to throw your Mega Knobs somewhere where they can just hold an objective and try to be tanky. The issue is they're trying to use Art as nails just like the Squig Hog Boys are trying to do it. And the second issue is, why do they only have 2 attacks? GW, that's insulting. I know you gave him kill rigs and you thought you were fancy by giving him reroll wounds, but you can't give an orc unit only 2 attacks. I don't care. It's not viable. It's not cool. Hopefully in the index, in the codex, they change that. It just pops 1 up to 3 attacks. As 2 attacks base for the kill saw is just utterly ridiculous. So yeah, that's probably why you're not seeing Gaz, because the Mega Knobs themselves aren't really doing what you want them to do either, and the dev wounds. So if you're gonna bring Mega Knobs, you end up just bringing the Big Macs. You can regen them, have the 4-up invuln, and they can just stand there. Because when it comes to offensive output, they're just not doing it. You'd rather just bring more knobs, normal knobs, right? Just knobs with power claws, and just get the volume in there and the AP from that. Buying 15 more Death Copters just for spite, and you are a flying get then. Oop. I'm going to get some more Death Copters so I can wall alongside James. You guys are weird boys, but I appreciate it. And that being said, we got David's actually coming back. He's flying back from Italy tomorrow, which means our short form edited videos are going to come back. The The WAAAGH tactic videos are going to be more coming back into play. Sorry for those who were on the stream on Tuesday and I was not existing. I was lost in the warp. But that it's not a bad thing being lost in the warp. I was killing a lot of demons and getting crumped in return. But David will be returning. He's the editor and he's the one who does more of the technical proficiencies here, which will help us for our short form content, form interactions. And also, like I said earlier in the beginning of this, we got these shirts. I'm gonna show you. Don't cross a wall because we knock your teeth out. That's what it says in the back. Of course, this is literally just what I'm going to be wearing just for me. I don't, if there's enough interest and such and we continue to grow, we can become merch. But we obviously want to get feedback from the Discord on what you guys say, how you want it to look, what you like, what you don't like, and the options. We're not just jumping straight into it, but I just wanted to have something to wear. That way I look a little bit uniform, make a little sense, matches my little headband. Pretty cool. All right. So you're still a weird boy. I just want to say that again. All right. So everybody, hopefully you guys enjoyed what's happening. We appreciate your support and your comments and your walls as it gets me excited. But like I always say, to keep in mind, don't cross a wall because we knock your teeth out. I gotta click that in stream. Sorry, I should have done that sooner.